When ancient humans started smoking, light a cigarette today and you're tapping into one of the oldest intoxicant relationships humans have ever had, far older than most people would guess. Forget the idea that smoking started a few centuries ago with European explorers. The real story begins deep in the Pleistocene, before agriculture, before pottery, before most of what we'd recognize as civilization existed. In 2021, archaeologists excavating a site called Wishbone in Utah's Great Salt Lake Desert made a discovery that rewrote the timeline entirely. Inside an ancient fire hearth, they found 4 charred tobacco seeds. Using radiocarbon dating on the burned wood surrounding them, researchers determined the hearth was roughly 12,300 years old. That single finding pushed back the known history of human tobacco use by 9,000 years. Before this discovery, the oldest confirmed evidence came from 3,000-year-old ceramic pipes in Alabama containing nicotine residue. The Wishbone site shattered that timeline, and the research published in the journal Nature Human Behaviour immediately reshaped how scientists think about the deep history of human intoxicant use. Here's what makes this even more interesting. The people at this site weren't farmers. They were hunter-gatherers living near the tail end of the last ice age, when mammoths still roamed parts of North America. According to archaeologist Darren Duke, who led the research, the tobacco plants likely weren't growing locally. They were probably gathered from foothills or mountains over 13 kilometers away and carried back deliberately to camp. That's not an accident, that's intention. Someone identified this plant, recognized its effects, and made the deliberate effort to bring it back, rather than simply consuming it where it grew. Duke summarized the discovery simply. People in the past were essentially expert botanists, identifying which plants produced noticeable effects almost as soon as they encountered them. This wasn't a fluke. It reflects careful observation and knowledge passed down between generations. Now, an important clarification: the seeds prove tobacco use, not necessarily smoking specifically. Researchers aren't certain whether these particular people inhaled smoke, chewed the leaves, or used the tobacco some other way entirely. But the discovery confirms something larger. Humans were deliberately seeking out psychoactive plants over 12,000 years ago, long before farming or permanent settlements existed in the region. So when did actual confirmed smoking, meaning inhaling burned tobacco specifically, first show up in the historical record? The clearest early evidence comes from the indigenous peoples of Peru, with hard archaeological confirmation dating to roughly year zero, meaning right around 2,000 years ago. From there, the practice spread steadily across the Americas. The Maya civilization incorporated tobacco deeply into ritual and religious life by at least the 10th century, often associating it directly with their gods. Tobacco wasn't a casual habit, it was sacred. Maya priests reportedly carried tobacco gourds as religious symbols, and it played a central role in trance rituals meant to connect directly with the spirit world. The Aztecs went even further, weaving tobacco directly into their core mythology. Their goddess Tzihua was believed to be composed of tobacco itself, a plant elevated to divine status. From Mesoamerica, smoking practices gradually spread northward, eventually reaching deep into the Mississippi Valley region of North America by around the 5th century, carried along migration and trade routes over hundreds of years. For thousands of years, this remained an entirely New World phenomenon. Europe had no concept of smoking until 1492, when Columbus's crew encountered indigenous peoples using dried tobacco leaves for the first time. Within a single century, smoking spread explosively across Europe, Asia, and Africa, transforming from an ancient sacred ritual into a global commodity that would eventually become one of the most profitable and most heavily scrutinized industries in human history. So here's the real picture. Long before written history, before farming, before permanent settlements existed anywhere, Ancient hunter-gatherers were already identifying, transporting, and deliberately using psychoactive plants like tobacco. What started as careful observation around a single desert hearth 12,300 years ago eventually became sacred religious ritual, then deep cultural tradition, then a habit that reshaped economies and entire societies across the planet. The next time you see someone light up, understand this. That simple act connects directly back to a small group of hunter-gatherers in the Ice Age who looked at a plant growing in distant mountains, decided it was worth the long walk back to camp, and quietly changed human behavior forever.